his will become our will. If God's will becomes our will, then his spirit becomes our spirit. His way becomes our way. Then we are at peace with him, and being at peace with him, we are at peace with all of his creation. So submission to the will of God brings about much blessing. But the greatest blessing of all in submitting to the will of God is that we enter into peace with the sovereign of the universe. Think about that. Now, sometimes you have a conflict with your landlord or landlady. That's serious. Especially when someone has the power to put you out. That's a serious conflict. Sometimes it becomes a test of will. And usually the landlord prevails, especially if you have violated some rule or regulation set down in a lease agreement. When there is a test of will, then there is a winner and a loser. Someone must prevail in a test of wills, except sometimes the fight is so good on either side they call it a draw. But in real life and not in game situations, the test of will brings about a winner and a loser. Now, I said that to say that when you submit to the will of your landlady, there's peace with the landlady, peace with the landlord. When we submit to the law, which is the will of the legislators that they set up to govern the society, there's generally peace with the law, peace with those who enforce the law. Now, what happens when the will of those in authority is in opposition to the will of God? Then the common people have to choose between obedience to God and obedience to man, even though God is an unseen reality. Yet he is a reality. The powers that we obey on a daily basis are a seen reality whose power we can measure. We can measure the power of the mayor, the power of the city council, the power of the police department, the power of the federal government, the power of state government. And nobody really wants to be in opposition to those powers, for they are formidable. But if those powers are against the will of God, and we are put in the valley of decision where we have to choose whether we should obey the president or obey God, obey the governor or obey God, obey the mayor and the police department or obey God, and when we choose to obey God, then we are no more at peace with the president, no more at peace with the governor, no more at peace with the mayor or the police department, though we are at peace with an unseen reality. And by our not being at peace with those in positions of authority, then comes the test of will. The test of will. Naturally, the government is more powerful than we. But if our will is in submission to the will of the omnipotent power, the omnipresent one, then ultimately, though we are weak in number, our will prevail. the question we have to ask is, how do we determine what is God's will? It's a good question. Well, there are many ways to determine what God's will is. One of the ways we can use is to study creation. Bound up in creation is God's active will, the deliberate actions that he has taken. It shows the power of the control that his mind has over all of his actions. Just study what he created. If the whole entire universe was covered with darkness, then darkness is a reality. But it is a reality that the Creator desired to overcome. He was not satisfied with darkness. And so he said, let there be, according to the Bible. But in the Quran, he said, kun fayakun. Be, and it is. Not let there be, because there was none to give him permission. He just called light into existence. The fact that darkness is a reality that God had to overcome, then darkness is a reality in all things of life that living things have to overcome. Though darkness is necessary, yet it is not to rule. Darkness never was intended for God, by God, to rule. Therefore, he made a light to rule the night. And he made a light to rule the day. God is the light and is a lover of light and has created light to overcome darkness. So we can say that the will of God is that all men walk in the light. That's his will. When there is ignorance and God is opposed to ignorance, then he will raise a teacher to bring forth light to erase or eradicate darkness. So God has always given us teachers to improve the condition of our minds, that we may not walk in ignorance or in darkness. Is that right? So we can say then that God's will is that human beings come out of ignorance. Any government, any power that wants to maintain a rule of ignorance over the people is a power that is opposed to the will of God. So when one rises up to teach a truth that the government does not want to be known, then the government will oppose that one, and it will appear that the government, in a test of wills, has the power to eradicate this little one who speaks the truth. And certainly many have been eradicated who speak the truth. But you cannot eradicate the truth by crushing a speaker here or a speaker there. There will always come another and another and another until darkness is finally overcome. Listen, God created life. Life. Even though death is a part of life, as darkness had to be before the light, nevertheless, death serves life as darkness serves light. How does darkness serve light? Darkness makes us want to see the light again. The longer you stay in darkness, you crave for the light, because you are by nature a creature of light. You don't love to stay in dark places, although dark places are necessary for certain things at certain times, but